All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are so glad that you're here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time zone that you're joining us from. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat if you'd like to introduce yourself and let us know where you're tuning in from. Be great to see where our audience is today, but we're so glad you're here. This is our virtual essay program. We are all admission officers at Hamilton, but this is more about writing your college essay in general. We're so glad you're here. We'll start by introducing ourselves to you. And then I also wanted to introduce one of our colleagues who's also behind the scenes right now. But I'm Niki Barron. I'm an Associate Dean of Admission at Hamilton. I'm also a Hamilton College alum. I graduated from Hamilton in 2002. And behind the scenes this evening, or this afternoon, this morning, is our colleague, Ben Rose. Ben is behind the scenes. He's monitoring the Q&A and the chat. So please feel free to address any questions that you might have along the way in the Q&A. But I'm going to turn it over to JD now to introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. Hello, all, and welcome to tonight, this morning's session. I am JD Roth. I'm Associate Dean of Admission here at Hamilton, and glad to have you all with us. On to you, Addie.
Thanks, JD. Hi, everyone. Welcome again. So happy to have you here. Excited to have you. My name is Addie Bartlett. I'm a Senior Assistant Dean of Admission here at Hamilton.
Terrific. So today's program will answer some of your common questions about college essays. Our advice is just our advice. Evaluating essays is truly subjective, so just take our advice with a grain of salt. But we know that many of you who are tuning in today are perhaps high school seniors who are already working on your college applications and thinking about that main essay that you'll be submitting with all of your college applications. So we hope to give you some tips, some advice, but again, our advice is simply our advice. There is no right or wrong way to write an essay. There really are many right ways to write an essay. And we know that all of you have a great essay in you. We truly do read your essays, and we care about getting to know you. So today's program, this evening's program is really going to address how the essay fits in with your application. We'll talk a little bit about what we look for as we read application essays. We'll give you some ideas as you're thinking about choosing a topic to make your essay stand out and let us get to know you. We'll also give you some examples of some essays that we've read over the years that stood out to us as being especially memorable essays. And we'll also give you some do's and don'ts with some tips as you're thinking about writing your essay. So how does the essay fit into the overall application? What is the personal essay? It is truly a personal statement. This is an opportunity for you to tell your story, for us to really get a sense of your voice, get a sense of what's important to you. We're not mind readers, so if you want us to know something, you'll need to tell it to us in your application essay. We need to hear directly from you. This is really one of the times in your application when your voice shines through in your application. You're writing directly to the admission committee that is making the decisions on your application. You're also welcome to use the additional information section on the application to highlight some things that maybe don't fit directly into your personal statement. Maybe some extra context, maybe some highlights of some experiences that you've had that you don't otherwise have an opportunity to address in your application, in your essay, or in other places of your application. You're welcome to put those in the additional information section. You can also email colleges and universities directly with additional follow-up specific information that you would like that college admission committee to take into consideration. So again, you don't have to feel like your essay needs to contain everything about you, but certainly there are other places in the application to address your experiences from high school and from growing up. Context really matters in your essay. The application essay is one piece of many that we consider in our application review process. So it's not like we only review your essay and make an admission decision on your application based only on your essay. Your essay is used in combination with all the other required components to your application, such as your transcript, your letters of recommendation, the things that you've done outside the classroom. The essay is just one piece of many that we're considering as we review your application. Also, remember that a human being reads your essay. We are not using ChatGPT or AI or computers to review your essay. Your essay is truly reviewed by individual human beings. All three of us here today are reading your essay very carefully. It's one of the things we look forward to as we review essays or as we review applications, is that we really do enjoy hearing students' voice and hearing things that are important to you and the experiences that you've had and your goals and interests and what you hope to achieve during your time in college. But that's just a really broad introduction to the application essay. I'm actually going to turn it over to Addie here. And Addie is actually going to talk about what we specifically look for in an application essay.
Thanks, Nikki. So when we're reading your essays, it really is that time where we get to know you. You get to bring your application to life here. You are submitting your voice, sharing your perspectives, your experiences, and you're really telling a story about you. And we want to know who you are as an individual because there's no one else but you. And this essay is a great area that you can expand on that. Give us a glimpse into your experience in your life. So while you're sharing your story, you're talking directly with us and again, bringing that application to life. And we want to hear your unique voice. We know you're teenagers. We read a lot of your essays. So we will know if there's an adult, a counselor, a teacher who's going in and heavily editing that essay. But remember, think of it as how you would talk. What are ways that you would say something, how you would share your ideas. Make sure that voice is unique to you. And for some general writing tips, make sure your ideas are clear. Grammar is checked over. Don't go for every SAT large word or using that thesaurus. Making sure it is really coming from you and how you would write organically. And then making sure the length is not too long or too short. We know you have a limit, but keep it in a nice, appropriate length for what feels good to you. One piece of advice that I like to share that helped me personally when I was working on my essay is practice reading it out loud. Make sure it sounds like you. While not everything translates perfectly reading out loud, but it is a great way to make sure it really is your voice on the page. And while you're thinking of how to write it, you might be wondering, what can I be writing about? So this is where I will toss it over to JD, who will talk about picking a topic.
Yeah, thank you, Addie. So, right, as we have talked about, this is a personal essay, so we do expect to learn about you through this, and we want you to share some personal experiences. But I think that the number one thing that we all want you to do is share appropriately personal experiences. You are writing to essentially we're strangers, right? We're friendly strangers. We're friendly here. We're giving you advice today, but we're strangers. So, be careful in what you share. Anybody remember the acronym TMI, right? Too much information. Sometimes, we've all read, and I see Nikki smiling. We've all read some essays where we think, gosh, that's a little bit of oversharing here. So, remember to be appropriate. This is, a venue for you to share personally, obviously about yourself, but in an appropriate manner. You're always going to think and want to select a topic that is uniquely you, unique to you. This is your chance to tell us something that you might not have the ability to elsewhere in the application. And there are lots of people who are contributing to your application, your counselors and your teacher recommendations, where we learn about you through their eyes. And this is our chance to learn about you through your eyes. So think about something that isn't going to be reflected in your transcript, right? The classes that you're taking, or not necessarily reflected maybe through the extracurriculars that you're putting down on the application, and that we might not hear from a teacher or from a counselor, something that is a unique window into your experience, a unique window into your life. Now, I know that when you are looking to select an essay topic, it's difficult to do so right under a time crunch, right? Come up with an essay topic. You freeze, right? It instills a little bit of panic. So you've got some time. Application deadlines are a little ways off yet. I would really recommend chatting with others in your life. Talk with your parents, talk with your friends, talk with teachers. Start kicking around ideas in your head around your essay. topics. Keep a running list of funny moments, poignant moments in your life, things that interest you. We are in a great age where we've all kind of got one of these in our pockets. These have notes apps on them. I kind of live and die by my notes app from when I'm trying to remember things. Open up start a new note in your notes app, and write down some topics that might resonate with you to approach as a college essay. Then when you're sitting down to start writing, you've got a little bit of a list there to go back through and pick a topic or pick an item. It'll help you spark an idea when you're ready to sit down and write. What makes you a better writer? When you think about it, good writers are almost always good readers. We all know, we all can identify some pretty good writing when we see it. So pick up a favorite book from an author or set of short stories from a writer that you've always admired. Go back through it. Find some inspiration there. I'm often asked by students, especially in high school visits, right? Are there any, really good or really bad topics? Are there any things I should avoid? And there are really no hard and fast rules about topics to avoid. I think it's more about the approach that you take with your topic. But there are a few, I suppose, I could put traffic cones around, some caution around if you're going to approach them. And one really is adversity. We read a lot of essays about difficult times in people's lives, difficult scenarios that they have dealt with. And you can write about this, of course. I'm not saying not to. You can write about this if it's important to you. But what we have found is that sometimes it takes a lot of words to talk about these difficult, adverse situations. You only have about 650 words to convey your point across to us. And sometimes it's not enough space to properly put some of these adverse situations into context. We want you to be able to put together an essay where we can see some growth or some transition from you. And so I do caution you, if you're writing about from a point of adversity, that you find a way to do it justice within the time, or within the character limit that you have to you. They always say it's really easy to write a lot, and it's really difficult to write a little and concise. Um, I think it was Mark Twain, right? Brevity is the soul of wit. But you have to give yourself the grace to perhaps forego a topic on adversity if you can't do it justice within that allotted time, or excuse me, that allotted word count. And another area that we find can sometimes lead students into a difficult path is we have a lot of students who have who are student athletes, who have athletic achievements, and that is a really important part of their lives and their background, and they want to share that with us. Sometimes it's from the point of adversity, right? We get 2-for-1 there, but sometimes it's the point of we won the state soccer championship, and you want to share that as part of who you are. But we want you to make sure that that comes back to being a personal essay at the end of the day. And one way that we found, or that I found in recent years, a student who approached their athletic topic from a unique window was not necessarily to talk about athletics in her life at the moment, or that particular championship that we knew about because it was listed on the extracurricular activities, but more about her introduction to the sport as a 5-year-old, right? She was a hockey player, and her brothers were a little bit older than her, and they needed a hockey goalie, and they dragged her out and they duct taped couch cushions to her and stuck her in the goal, right? But the way she told that story, you kind of felt like you were standing in that goal with her, wrapped up in couch cushions, getting ready to deflect your older brother's hockey puck. And so there are ways to work within these topics that are unique, and are going to let your voice come through. Now, speaking about your voice coming through and being authentic, I'm going to tag Niki here to talk about gimmicks to avoid and how to really make that essay authentically you.
Sure. Thanks, JD. So JD touched on this a little bit already, but we recommend that you try to avoid being gimmicky or trying too hard to make your essay stand out. We can tell when an essay sounds like it's being forced. You just want to be yourself. You want to make it sound like it's your natural voice that is really coming through. I think sometimes students will often think that they need to pick the most extraordinary topic or an idea that is so different from what other applicants might be writing about. It's okay to write about those common topics, but be yourself. Make sure that your voice is coming through and that we are really hearing directly from you in the essay that you choose to write about. Make sure that your essay is truly a reflection of who you are. I often hear the tip from other colleagues that if you have written your essay and you don't have your name left on your essay and you leave your essay behind in a public place and someone picks up and reads your essay, will they be able to know who the author of that essay is? If the answer is yes to that question, then you've written an essay where your voice is truly coming through. You are the only one who can share your voice, so it's really important to be true to yourself. Humor can sometimes be effective in an essay, but if you don't consider yourself to be someone who is a funny person or has a sense of humor, your essay is probably not the first place to try to be funny or to try to have a sense of humor. So if you consider yourself funny, go ahead and put some humor in your essay. But if humor doesn't come naturally to you, it's okay to not include humor in your essay. Again, sincerity and authenticity is really key to having your essay stand out for us. Clean and simple writing is better than trying too hard. Sometimes this will come through more clearly with refining, editing, proofreading, which means that the essay writing process is a time-consuming process. You want to leave yourself enough time to be able to edit your essay and make sure that your essay is truly a reflection of who you are. Another effective technique in writing an essay is to provide some twists in your essay. If you're taking your essay in a specific direction, maybe you want to turn it in a different direction that really catches us off guard that we weren't expecting. So twists can sometimes be effective essay strategies. Another effective essay strategy is to write a good opening. We're about to share a couple of examples of some opening sentences that we've read in essays in the past, but a good opening is a great way to draw your reader in. You've probably heard this multiple times, perhaps from your English teachers in high school or other writing teachers in other classes in high school, but making sure that you're hooking your reader from the start by offering a really good opening to your essay that makes us really excited about continuing to review your essay and hear what you have to tell us in your essay. I think also another common thing that we see in essays is sometimes students think that the essay is a chance to write their autobiography. Sometimes students are trying to capture their entire childhood in their essay. And oftentimes it is much harder for us to really hear your voice and to hear the things that are important to you when you're writing about something that is so broad, that incorporates so many different experiences that you've had over a longer period of time. And so generally, the more effective essays are the ones that are very specific about a very specific moment in time or a very specific experience that you've had that you're able to then describe in greater detail, rather than trying to sort of generalize all the experiences that you've had over your lifetime up to the point that you're applying to college. But I'm going to turn it over to JD. JD's going to kick us off with some ideas of essays that worked for us over the years. And we're going to give you a couple of examples of opening sentences that we've read over the years. JD?
Yeah, and as Niki said, these are essays that really captivated us, that grabbed our attention and made us say, gosh, I really want to dive in and see where this person is going. So let me read this first one here. When I was still small enough to fit in the sun-drenched space between the armoire and the couch, I sat cross-legged and spun the world. Addie, I think you've got one.
It's 6:52 a.m. on a frosted over Friday in September, and my dad and I are running late as we wind down our steep hill to school.
So one thing that those sentences both had in common was that they asked a question, right? They left you wanting more. They left you wanting to dive into the topic, dive into the writing and figure out where they were going.
Great. We'll give you now a couple of examples. The three of us will give some examples of essay topics that have worked for us over the years in terms of those essays that stood out as being the most memorable. So I have been reading essays for more than 20 years, and I think over the years, my favorite essay came about 12 years ago. So it's been a long time now. But my favorite essay that I've read so far in my career was about a student's commute to school. So you'd think that commuting to school is a pretty ordinary topic. And I think this is a great example of a student who wrote about something that is not necessarily extraordinary, but the way the student wrote about this made her essay extraordinary, because she talked about her commute to school. She walks to school every day. And in her essay, she described her neighborhood that she walks through. So I got a sense of her community. I got a sense of how she thinks as she walks to school and gets prepared for her day ahead. And then she talked about her commute home from school. And she talked about how she processes and digests everything that happened to her in the school day. She also talked about the changes that she sees depending on the time of the day in her neighborhood, depending on whether she's walking through her neighborhood in the morning versus walking through her neighborhood in the afternoon. She also talked about how she gets herself ready and psyched up to be able to do an evening of homework and also to get ready for some other activities that she had going on for the rest of her day. So that essay really stood out to me because I got a really good sense of how the student thinks. I got a really good sense of what her daily activities are as she's walking to and from school every day. I got a really good sense of her neighborhood and her community of where she's grown up, which provided really good context for reading the rest of her application. And that essay, I think, really stood out just because I heard her voice. It felt like a really authentic essay that was truly written by a teenager. I think we'll talk a little bit more about this in a bit, but we can really tell the difference between essays that have been written by a 16, a 17, or an 18-year-old versus those essays that perhaps are written by an adult. And so as you are proofreading your essay, make sure that the teenager voice comes through and that you're not using so many suggestions, perhaps from adults who are helping you with this process, that you lose your voice in that process. I think JD has an example next to share.
Yeah, so the example that I want to share was written by a student who really wanted a dog when she was in middle school. And it was about trying to convince her parents that she was ready and she was mature enough to take on the responsibility of a dog. And what she did is she described how she did this to prove to her parents. She got an old skateboard and she made a dog out of cardboard and she stapled him down to the skateboard, right? Fashioned him out of the cardboard, stapled him down to the deck, put a leash on him, and she would get up every morning just before her father and walk, right? Drag the dog on the skateboard behind her, walk the dog every morning. And she explained how, she would go out, rain or shine, snow, right? Weather didn't matter. And she would take the dog on the walk just like she would promise her parents she would do if she had a real dog. She it was she captured me immediately talking about building this cardboard dog and stapling him to the skateboard deck, right? I was drawn in. I wanted to learn more, but I learned so much about her family dynamic, her relationship with her parents, her sense of wanting to be trusted and wanting to have that be trusted with the responsibility of caring for a dog, the challenge she had right in winning mom and dad over to being able to get a dog. It was an amusing essay, but it was also, I felt, again, and like Niki said, like I got to learn a lot about her daily life, her family life, and the dynamics of what was going on. And we admitted this student. I had a chance to speak with her when she came to an event that we had for admitted students. And I said, I remember you. I remember you and the skateboard dog. And I said, I have to know, did you get a real dog? And she did. They did get a real dog. A skateboard dog is still propped up in the corner of her bedroom at home. I've heard, but it was truly a memorable essay. Addie, I think you've got one to close this out.
Yeah. So my favorite essay that stood out to me was about the importance of colors. And the student started out by saying that they color code everything. And they've done this since they were a kid, organizing, making sure purple pens labeled where toys went, and blue pens were about where any of their schoolwork went, how they filled everything out. And it was just so specific in how she colored her world and really explained what these colors mean to her, and how every other kid who she knew was interested in maybe making a mess or playing make-believe, and she just wanted to organize everything. And she carried that into us talking about the relationship with her family, her parents, her teachers, and just how really she has been able to color the world around her and how she sees that way. And it stood out because I got to hear her. I ended up meeting this student during a visit, and they also used purple pens. So it really brought it back where I could tell this was truly who she was as a student, and coloring the world was one of her passions. So it was just a joy to read, and you wouldn't think reading about color coding could be so fascinating, and it really was, because she used that voice so well.
Great, thanks, Addie. Before we move on to kind of a list of do's and don'ts here, I do think that it's helpful to kind of close out again by listing a few overused topic types. I think we did touch a little bit on these earlier, but I think that obviously they bear repeating. Activities, again, athletics, hobbies, service. This is a part of you, but make sure that you're telling us about this in a way, again, that is uniquely you. The second topic to avoid, and this is one that I think no matter how many times we say it, we're always going to get a lot of these. And these are personal essays that aren't about you, right? These are personal essays where we learn more about somebody else, be it a friend or your grandmother or your Uncle Charlie, right? And I read the essay, and at the end I say, gosh, I've really learned nothing about the applicant, but I feel like I know Uncle Charlie really well. And that's not really the situation you want to leave us in. So it's fine if there are other people in your essay, like obviously the one I talked about with the girl and the cardboard dog. I learned a little bit about dad not wanting a dog in the house, but right, he was a minor character overall. It wasn't necessarily from dad's point of view, or I didn't come away saying, gosh, I don't know anything about my applicant. I just know more about dad. And I think Niki talked about this earlier, but just the tendency uh, for students to just try and cram too much, to do too much with a single essay. Too many topics in one essay, too many experiences, too many objects. Really think about again, back to it's easier to write or it's harder to write less, but be organized about the things that you want to talk about. Don't overwhelm us as the reader. And again, you've only got 650 words. It's best to use them as judiciously as possible.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. We have some slides prepared for all of you, but we are going to share some tips here of do's and don'ts, and a lot of these will capture a lot of the things that we have already addressed, but this is just to bring them all together and summarize them all for you.
All right. So the first one is write about your interests. Again, personal essay. We want to know about what interests you.
Don't try to be what you think we want you to be. Be authentic to you.
Do be appropriate and remember your audience. Remember that you are writing to strangers who are excited to get to know you, but we don't know you at the time that you are applying to college. We want to get to know you, but remember that we are adults. And so make sure that your essay is appropriate for an adult audience. And just remember that an admission committee will be the reviewers of your application and of your essay.
So obviously, you're going to want to edit your essay. You're going to want to proofread it. You're going to want to check it over, but resist the temptation to over-edit. If you do that, a lot of times you have the tendency to lose your authentic voice in the process of that.
Do tell a story. Remember, this is your time in that application that you get to share your perspective, your experience, and really come off the page. So make sure you're telling a story to us and make sure it's concise as well within that 650 word limit.
Don't forget that this is a personal essay. This is not an essay that you're writing for an academic class. So be yourself. Let us get to know you in your essay. Don't recycle something that you've already used for a class, because sometimes we see that every year. But this is really a personal essay, a chance to tell your story, be who you are. Let us get to know you.
Show, don't tell, right? Personal anecdotes, examples, some really descriptive writing will make it much more engaging. Draw the reader in and keep them engaged throughout your essay.
Don't overuse a thesaurus or be too vague. So don't fill it with a bunch of colorful words or really complicated words. Try and sound just like you would, and then be descriptive. Don't be vague. While you want to leave us with questions, but make them be good questions that we can answer from what you've described in your essay.
Do relate your essay to who you are now. So sometimes we read essays about experiences perhaps that happened in elementary school. Remember that you are applying to college, most likely as a senior in high school. And so if you are going to write about an experience that happened a long time ago, make sure that you really spend more time on your essay reflecting on how that earlier experience impacted and shaped you as you are today. You are applying to college at the point that you are likely a senior in high school. And so we really do want to know you now versus who you were perhaps 10 years ago when you were just starting out on your academic journey.
Don't be afraid to start over. And I know that that can be daunting when you have sunk a lot of time into a topic or you're 3 drafts into something. You say, gosh, maybe if I keep working on it, I can get this right. I can get this right and I can get it the way I want it. It's okay. It's okay to take a step back. It's okay to evaluate where you are so far. And it's okay to kind of drop a topic and shift to something else if it's not working for you. Don't be wedded to that first idea or that first topic that you're going down. It's fine to start over.
Do proofread early, often, and out loud. Like I shared earlier, do read your essay out loud. It may feel a little different at first, but get comfortable with hearing how you would speak, and you will be able to find what maybe isn't working in your essay, but make sure you're proofreading right away and often.
Don't procrastinate. Leave yourself lots of time. I think it's great that all of you have tuned in today. This is the second week of September. So the fact that you're starting to think about your essay simply by being here today is a really good starting point. Or maybe you already have a draft of your essay. That's great too. Maybe you haven't even started to think about your essay, but the fact that you're here today means that you're at the starting point of thinking about your essay. So it's great that you're all here today. I think it's great that you're starting to work on your essays. So just remember to leave yourself lots of time, because we also read essays that we can tell were written the day that you submitted your application. So you just want to make sure that you're giving yourself plenty of time to be able to put yourself in your essay, make sure it's a great demonstration of your best work, that it's showing us your writing skills, but it's also letting us get to hear your story.
And lastly, remember that we're on your side. We want to see you successful. We want to read some good essays, and we want to give you the support that you need. We've got a lot of great resources Hamilton has on essays that worked, and we'll share those a little bit later. We're also going to follow up with you with an email to everybody who was here tonight with a recording of this session and some links to things that are going to be helpful for you. So we are here for you. Remember that.
We also wanted to draw your attention to a couple of websites that are available on the Hamilton website. The first one is Tips for a Good College Essay. As JD said, we will follow up by email with these links to these websites at Hamilton. So if you missed this now, it's fine. You'll get it in just a little bit in your email. But this is one hopefully helpful resource available for you on the Hamilton website with some tips. It'll cover a lot of what we're talking about during this virtual program, but it'll also give you some things to continue to think about as you continue to work on your essays. The other hopefully helpful resource that's available for you on the Hamilton website are some actual sample essays. These are full-length essays that we have gotten permission from the authors to be able to share as examples of essays that over the years have stood out to us as memorable essays that we think are really good representatives of essays that worked. So feel free to check out those websites if you'd like to use those as resources as you continue to work on your essays. All right, so we also wanted to talk a little bit about individual college supplemental essays. So as you are working on your applications, you may have discovered that some colleges and universities will also ask you to write additional statements. Sometimes these are short answer responses. Sometimes these are full-length essays. It really varies from place to place, but these are additional writing supplements, additional writing options for you to demonstrate your ability as a writer, and also to provide additional information that some admission committees may be looking for as they review your application. They are not necessarily personal essays, so they may need a different approach as you are writing these. So make sure that you are looking up the colleges that you're thinking about applying to see if there are additional supplemental essays that are required, that are optional, or maybe that are not part of a college or university's application. I think it's just as important to spend as much care, as much time, as much effort on these essays as you do with your main personal essay. Because by spending as much time and care with these essays, you're demonstrating to that college or university that you really care about your application rather than just hastily putting it together. We do sometimes look at the consistency of writing between those supplemental essays and the main essay to see if it sounds like it was written by the same person. So again, making sure that you're putting in just as much effort into those supplemental essays is really key. To address the question that I think I just saw flash up on the screen that someone's asking, Hamilton specifically does have supplemental statements. They are short answer responses, but they are not required. They are optional. You can either submit those optional responses as you are hitting the submit button on your application, or you will also have the opportunity to submit those optional responses to those short answer statements after you've submitted your application directly through your applicant portal. Something else to keep in mind as you are writing supplemental essays for all of your college applications that might have supplemental essays is to be sure to pay attention to the prompt. This is usually going to mean that you're going to write multiple additional pieces of writing for all the colleges that you're applying to that have supplemental essay options, requirements. And so make sure that you're not simply copying and pasting your responses from one application to the next. I think sometimes colleges or universities will ask a question about why you are interested in a particular college or university, or why you feel that that institution is a good fit for you. Make sure that you're writing individual responses to that question, because sometimes we do get responses that have very clearly been copied and pasted that include the wrong institution name. So just make sure that if you are writing any of these types of essays, that you make sure that you insert the right college name into that response. Because if we get a response that is addressed to a different admission committee, we're going to want to forward your response to our colleagues at another institution. So just make sure that you are writing those essays individually for any supplements that you might be submitting with your college applications. I think we have a little bit of time to see if there are any questions that have been submitted live from our audience in the Q&A. I actually can see a few, and I know our colleague Ben Rose behind the scenes has been fielding some of them, so thank you, Ben. But I think we're going to go ahead and address some of them here that have been submitted. So one question that I see is, how do we determine which essay is our best essay if we have written more than one? Addie or JD, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, I think that this is an opportunity for you to seek some feedback. If you've got a couple of essays that you think are really good and you're kind of torn between them, take it to a parent, a friend, a counselor, a trusted teacher. Have them go through it. You say, which one of these do you learn more about me through? Which one of these paints a picture of my life that draws you in, wants you, and that makes you want to learn more about me? Sometimes you have to step back from something that you've created, of work that you've written, and have somebody else objectively look at it and give you a little bit of feedback. And I think that's really a good way when you're torn between two things where you got to say, gosh, these are both great. I think I could use both of them. Phone a friend, right? Get some outside help. And hopefully that might make things a little bit clearer for you.
Great. Another question that I see is it okay to write about a specific important journey in your life in a chronological order? It sounds like the student is thinking about introducing that topic, that journey, how the student struggled with that journey, and finally ending with the successes that the student accomplished as a result of that journey.
I definitely think that's okay to do. But when you're sitting there and thinking about this really important journey you've had, maybe write down the bullet points, the really important moments from beginning, middle, and end, and think of how you can write them. Another top idea could be writing it fully out with well beyond your 650 words and cutting back, paring back, seeing what really stands out and gets the point and the goal of your successes that you want to share. So finding that goal, the specific points that stick out the most to you, I think you can definitely use that and share those successes if you've been through an important journey in your life.
Yeah, and I think I'll jump in here and add that sometimes this might be a situation that could cause you to take the essay and kind of turn it upside down, meaning tell us kind of what the outcome was up front. And and that may be an opportunity to put something compelling that draws us in, and then support it with a bit of that storytelling, and how you kind of came to that conclusion in your life.
I see another question that is, what are the responses to essays that sound cliche? I don't think they're necessarily cliche essays that we've read, but I think we've talked a little bit already about some common topics that we have sometimes seen, such as the important person in your life essay, or the really proud moment that you had in your athletic career or in your acting career, or sometimes we read essays where someone is using sort of a framework of different objects and what those different objects represent, such as the pictures on your refrigerator, or the shoes in your closet and all the different experiences you've had wearing your different shoes, or sometimes we read about the different magnets on the refrigerator or the thumbtacks on your bulletin board. These are commonly used topics, but I wouldn't describe them as cliche, because if you're going to write about any of these topics, which is completely fine to write about these topics, if these are the things that come to mind as the most personal topics and experiences that you've had, again, just make sure that you are writing about these experiences in an authentic voice that is true to who you are. Let us get to know you if you are using one of these topics that we sometimes see frequently in an applicant pool. And again, it's fine to write about these commonly used topics. It's just all about how you write about them. Make sure that they are truly distinctive about who you are as an individual and putting yourself in your writing and in your essay. Let's see. I see another question. It looks like that was recently submitted. What if your voice is overly wordy or convoluted? As in, you read a lot of Nathaniel Hawthorne or John Krakauer. Would that make it sound not genuine?
Well, I think that it is important for you to own your voice, true. But I also think it's important for you to realize when you're writing to know your audience as well. And to realize that your audience for these essays are admission officers who, have to be somewhat judicious with their time when reading your essay, and have to be able to understand it and kind of get through it in a timely manner. And so if there is a way where you can reach a happy middle between what your style is without losing that voice, I would try and aim for that. I think would be my best advice.
Okay. What is your advice for having an intriguing opener which will catch the reader's attention?
Well, I think we said it earlier with one of our examples, but it left us asking a question, right? Addie read the example about the student heading off on a really cold morning off to school, and it was just one sentence, but it made me think, oh, what is different about this day? Why is the student setting it up this way? Where are they going? I want to learn a little bit more. Write in a way that makes the reader want to continue on to the next sentence and see what's happening.
What are some red flags in an essay that are no-goes? I would say there are no there are no wrong topics or bad topics to write about. It's really about how you write about them. Again, making sure that it is an appropriate topic for strangers to read about you, make it personal. I think sometimes students are trying to be distinctive by talking about things that happen in the bathroom. That would probably be something to try to avoid. I've read a couple of those over the years. That would probably be something to probably try to avoid about bathroom experiences. But otherwise, I can't think of other sort of red flags or bad topics to address. Addie or JD, can you think about anything?
Can't think about a topic, but a red flag, someone else writing your essay.
Yep. Or ChatGPT writing your essay. I think that we realize that the temptation may be out there for either of those things. But know that we have, and in our office collectively have an awful lot of experience with reading essays, and I think have a pretty good idea of what a student's authentic voice would look like.
Would you prefer our additional information section to be written somewhat formally, or can students write it more casually as long as they get their point across?
Yeah, so I mean, these additional information portions or these supplemental essays, you tend to have a lot less room. We're looking at about 250 words for our supplemental prompts. Other colleges and institutions may have other requirements, but it is, really what you think fits the situation. One of our supplemental questions is the what we call the why Hamilton question. What have you learned about Hamilton that would makes you feel like this is a place where you can come and thrive? And it may make sense for you to share an experience that you've had. Maybe you were here for a campus visit and you want to relay that how you felt there. That might be a little bit of a more informal approach, but it totally works in that situation.
Do you have any advice on how to conclude an essay? I would say it depends on what your topic is. It's hard to answer this question. I think if you are going to write about perhaps some challenges that you faced, maybe a challenging experience, how you overcame that experience, concluding with an optimistic tone, and concluding with how you think this has shaped you as an individual and what you're taking away from that experience. But I really think addressing this question depends a little bit on what the topic is and what the rest of the content of your essay is. But remember that you're writing an essay to an admission committee. We want to get to know you, but we also want to see this is an opportunity for us to learn about who you are as an individual. And we are trying to make an assessment of how you as an individual could contribute to our community. And we're also trying to see how our community could contribute to you and support you in your growth during your 4 years on our campus as a campus community member. It looks like just scrolling through some of the questions, it looks like a number of questions have been submitted with questions about whether certain topics that you're thinking about would be a good or an appropriate topic to cover. It's really any topic can be a good essay. It really depends on the approach that you take. Again, you want to be yourself. You want to be authentic to who you are. We want to hear your voice, tell your story. Let us get to know you in your essay. And so it's hard to answer all these questions about whether certain topics that you're thinking about would make a good or memorable or an essay that stands out. But again, just it's all about the approach that you take in the essay that you write. And it looks like we have one final question, which is it generally a red flag to reiterate some information from a student's personal statement in a supplemental essay?
I would say not necessarily, but again, you only have a limited amount of time, especially in those supplemental essays, with which to tell us something. And so if you've already given us that information in your personal statement, might be fine to just reference it or allude to it. But I would really try and leave yourself the room in those supplemental essays to cover something else, as long as you have already covered that first topic in your personal essay.
Great. Well, unfortunately, we're going to need to bring this to a close, but it was so nice to get to connect with all of you virtually today. We hope you found all this information helpful as you continue to think about your college applications, as you continue to work on your application essays. Feel free to reach out to any of us in the admission office at Hamilton if you have questions at any point during your college search process. We are happy to provide any information that might be helpful for you. Good luck to all of you as you continue on with working on your applications. And thanks again for tuning in and joining us today.